Okay, so yesterday we started 19:4. Hon Yosef Reim Rabim Vadalmi Re'ehu Yipared. Wealth adds, or extreme wealth adds many friends, and a poor person will be separated from his friend. Questions were, how does extreme wealth add many friends? What kind of friends? Are the friends in the first half the same as the friend in the second half, as the words would imply? 3, why is friend singular in the second half? 4, and plural in the first half. Even though that question is really more on the second half, right? Because we said that the first half, it wouldn't make sense if it says wealth adds a friend. But a poor person will be separated from his friends would be, more singular, or, more specific. 4, in the second half, who is separating from whom? 5, why? Why are they separating from him? Or why are they separating from each other? And then 6, what's the practical advice? Because it sounds like it's just stating a fact. So yesterday I feel like we had two tracks. One was that wealth adds friends because of the utility, that the person who is wealthy benefits his people who are around him in some way, like either buying stuff, or like they get to enjoy his Super Nintendos, or whatever. And then the poor person doesn't offer that, so that kind of explains the first half. Doesn't explain why the person, but why the poor person's friends separate from him, or he separates from them, right? It just explains why the wealthy person will get more friends. And then the second approach we had was what I tried to say at the end, which is that friendship is based on identification, and where you see aspects of yourself in the other person. And so the rich people will be attracted to the rich person because of the fantasies that come along with wealth, that they want to see themselves as having that status or that success or whatever, and that's what will draw them to him. And when someone is poor, then people will be repelled by that person because they don't want. If you identify with your friend, and your friend is in a state of lack and pain, so then that could cause it's a painful thing to like dwell in that, and you will be removed. And that's not a contradiction to if you have a friend who is going through something rough, because the main identification is with the friend themselves. But if this is the person's like perpetual state, then you just don't want to identify with that person. And I thought of a good movie quotation to illustrate this. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this on the the video or the podcast or whatever, but I know I told you before that I used to have a class called Mishlei and movies, which was an elective, and we would watch movies and then try to see Mishleic insights from them, either from specific psukim or just Mishleic way of thinking. And like, I just want to advocate. I know not everyone is a movie person, but one of the things that I've found about movies and Torah, okay, is that just like in Mishlei, that it says, Shlomo HaMelech says in Perek Beis. Actually, let me just look this up for 1 second here. In Perek Beis, this is a Mishlei movie, Moser here, right? Okay, this is for your benefit. In Perek Beis, when he's talking about how to get Chachma, he says, hold on. So this is the recipe for getting for getting Yiras Hashem. B'ni im tikach amarai u'mitzvosai titzvonitach. My son, if you take my statements and my mitzvos you guard with you, or you treasure. Lahakshif l'chachma oznecha, to listen attentively with your ear for chachma. Tate libcha l'tvuna, and to incline your heart to wisdom. K'im labina tikra l'tvuna titin kolecha. If you only cry out to bina, and you give forth your voice to tvuna. Now here's the pasuk: Im tavakshena kakasef uchamatamonim tachbasena. If you search for it like money, uchamatamonim tachbasena, and you look for it like hidden treasures, az tavin Yiras Hashem v'das elokim timsa. Then you will understand Yiras Hashem, fear of God, and the knowledge of God you will find. So Rabbeinu Yonah has a beautiful thing on this where he learns each one of these pasukim as a step. So we're just going to skip to the fourth step though, because that's the one I wanted to reference. Hamala Haravi is the fourth level. Sheyitrach b'chachma. So this is on if you look for it like money. If you Hamala Haravi sheyitrach b'chachma, that you toil after chachma. Kasher yitrach adam levakesh kesef. Just like a person toils to seek money. Okay, v'chein amru zal, ma yase adam v'yachkam yivakish rachmi misha chachma shelo shnemar ki Hashem yitin chachma v'yarbe b'yeshiva v'yimai b'schora u'mibalade shte elu ein adam zochel chachma. Okay, that's really more related to his first point, but the point is you got to look for it like money, and then hold on, is this a different Girsa of the Ben Yonah than I have? Interesting. I don't remember this being a fifth step. Okay, fine. I guess this is the fifth step, and look for it like hidden treasure. Maybe this is the one I wanted. Shitis arev lenafsho hachachma v'lo yihye alav iska letoreach merov ha'ahava. So your it should, the chachma should be pleasing to your soul, and the toiling after it should not be the involvement in it should not be a toil or a burden, merov ahava, due to the abundance of love. K'inyan shenemar, as it says by Yaakov Avinu, v'yihu be'enav kiyamim achadim, that his when he was working for Lavan to get married to Rachel, then it was like only a few days. Uk'inyan hachofes matmonim, this is the point. Uk'inyan chofes matmonim, like someone who's looking for treasures. Shehugad lo, that someone tells him, kiyesh matmon b'bayis hazeh. Someone says, oh, there's a treasure in that house. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's where treasures are kept. O bebika hazos, or a valley. Okay, that's more normal. Kilo yihye alav latoreach chipus hamatmon midato shimsa hon rab b'makom echad v'yis asher b'rega echad. So it won't be a burden for him to search for that treasure, because he knows that he might find abundant treasure in one place and become instantaneously rich. Hine hisir latorech b'chachma uvakesh kesef b'minim b'lachos v'askoros lahasik b'tircha v'chipusa arevus chofes hamatmonim. So basically, your joy in looking for chachma should be like this as well. So my understanding of this, again, I haven't done this for Ben Yonah in a very long time, but my understanding of this in terms of Mishlei is like, when you are, if you know the nature of chachma, you'll know that like you could have one shear that could give you an idea that changes your life, or one pasuk, and the more experiences like that you have, the more that will shape your general attitude towards like being involved in the pursuit of chachma, because you know that fine, it might not be that you get the same degree of utility or pleasure or insight from every single moment of learning, but you know that the activity of learning has the capacity for that kind of instantly rich, and finding treasure. So that will drive you to seek it. Okay, so that's like by Torah. Now, my application to movies, lahavdil, is like, if you might watch a movie, and there will be one line or one scene in the movie that, because of the nature of the medium, will stick with you and will like solidify an idea, or like exemplify an idea, or like stand out in your mind, and that will make the entire movie worthwhile. Like, there are certain movies that were actually bad, but I'm glad I watched them because there will be that one moment, and that's kind of what I sought to do in this Mishlei movies class, is like through approaching movies in a Mishleic way, then it primes you to see Mishleic examples in the movies. And like Mortimer Adler says about reading, which applies to movies as well, is I guess it's all fiction. Fiction is vicarious experience, that your realm of experience is very limited to the activities that you do in life. But if you read or watch fiction, and either it is realistic or the ideas are realistic, then you will expand the scope of your experience without actually having to undergo those experiences. And because it's a very visceral medium where you feel what's going on and it impresses itself on your imagination, then it can last, and it can really like amplify the ideas that you learn. So that's my pitch for like why you should watch movies on your free time, when you are involved in Mishlei, because you'll see these things. So having said that, I guess any questions about that? First, that was kind of a side pitch. Okay, so yeah.
I guess would you say that this might be an obvious question, but would you say that shows have the same effect, or is it like
have the same effect? Yeah.
Okay.
And it really doesn't matter also whether it is different genres will have different yield different kinds of results. For example, dramas, or like fictions based on history or nonfiction, I guess, are the closest in type to what I was talking about with the vicarious experience. But you can get comedy, like in comedy. I mean, there's so many examples in Seinfeld, that like give insight into human nature. In horror, in the horror genre, I mean, Ryan Moskowitz used to, he had always talked about doing we used to do, our Mishlei shir during the summer. And some summers, instead of doing Mishlei, we did short stories. And he always used to want to do a season of that specifically focused on horror, because he says what makes horror is you are seeing things that make you aware of parts of yourself that you don't want to confront. And that is a tremendous opportunity for self-knowledge, and there's nothing like horror in learning. I mean, like, there are certain parts where like you'll see, you'll get self-knowledge and not like it, but nothing where you'll be frightened or scared or disgusted, like in an actual horror movie, so
Yeah,
so
like
there's that.
bring up the painful emotion.
Bringing up the painful emotion in the way where it's like rubbing it in your face, so yeah, so shows can definitely have the same impact.
If you had to recommend one movie to watch, what would you recommend for this
movie or show?
Movie,
Shows
movie.
I can recommend. Movies are much harder. I have to think about the movie question, but yeah, just I guess to get it out there with shows. I mean, the greatest. It's a competition in my mind. The greatest shows in my mind in terms of both like as a show, but also in terms of how much Mishlei insight they have is Breaking Bad. And by Breaking Bad, I include Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, which is the sequel prequel, meaning it was prequel in history, but came afterwards. And then Mad Men. Those are the two shows that for me, and I've watched the entire thing for both of them, I think maybe 4 or 5 times in their entirety. But never, I mean, it is incredible. I got to get back to you on the movie thing. That's a hard one. That's a really hard one. Yeah. So that's that. Okay. But the reason I brought it up is in our pasuk, in terms of this approach, there is a not good movie, in my opinion, that yielded one line that when I was thinking about this pasuk this morning, I like identified to this one line. It's a movie called Nixon, and it was made in 1995, starring, oddly enough, Anthony Hopkins as Nixon, and that's part of what made it bad, because Anthony Hopkins is one of the best actors in ever, but his accent is his Welsh accent gets in the way of depicting Nixon, and it's a Roger Stone movie, and Roger Stone does historical fiction that's very over the top, but the whole movie is about Nixon's whole career, from political career, and part of the themes of the movie is one of the themes of the movie is his competition with Kennedy, with JFK, who he lost to, and was very bitter about. So then, in one of the most dramatic scenes in the movie, spoiler alert, Nixon gets impeached. Okay, but he is. I think the scene in the movie is like it's maybe on the eve of his spoiler alert, also he resigns, but I think it's on the eve of his resignation. So and I'll send you guys a link to the scene, just so you can, it's not as good if you didn't watch the whole movie, but like he says his final goodbyes to Kissinger and then whoever the other guy is in the scene, and then the camera pans, and I don't know if you've ever seen the presidential portrait of Kennedy. I mean, it's one of the most amazing pieces of art that I've seen, but the presidential portrait of Kennedy is looming in the background, and Nixon looks at the picture of Kennedy and says, and obviously all of the memories come flooding back about how much people loved Kennedy and how much people hate Nixon, and he looks at Kennedy and he talks to the portrait and he says, when people look at you, they see what they want to be, but when they look at me, they see what they are. And that, like, I associated to that this morning, and I was like, that's exactly the pasuk, is that people look at the rich person and they see what they want to be, which is rich, successful, glorious. They don't see any of the bad stuff, right? They only see the fantasy thing, like I can be happy. They see all the koheles yisron and stuff like that. And then they look at the poor person and they see, this could happen to me. This is really what I am, like I can be subject to this. I'm vulnerable. I can't, it arouses all of their fears. and it sees and they see what they are in terms of a vulnerable, frail human being, and they don't like that, and so they separate from the poor person. So that, I think, that line from that movie really encapsulates like the shot that I was trying to give for the for our pasuk. Yeah. Okay, so you want to see some meforshim? Or do you have questions on that? Okay, so here are a couple of meforshim here. So Rabag does take the utility approach. He says, Hon Yosef, Hon Ha'ashir Yosef lo re'im rabim. So the wealth of the wealthy person will add many friends. Kihu mehane osam tamid bahono. He will benefit them constantly with his wealth. Ulam, excuse me, Hadal. However, the which by the way, that sounds like actual benefit. Ulam Hadal, however, the poor person, lo yikne lo re'im. He will not acquire friends, so that's a given the fact that he's not going to be able to benefit them. Aval daluso yihesiba al shi pard me re'ehu, but his poverty will be a cause of his friends separating from him. Ki ein lo bamesh yehanehu bo lahamshich hareus beinehem, because he doesn't have anything to benefit them with in order to prolong or sustain the friendship. So to me, that suggests that we are talking here about friendship of utility in the Rambam's threefold division, because otherwise, like, the friendship is not going to be dependent on like getting benefit from them, like monetary benefit or like tangible benefit. So I assume the Rabag is taking that approach, saying Re'im is in the most basic sense of Reus, is like getting a benefit from them. Okay, so that I don't like that pshat, but it is what we one of the possibilities we said yesterday. Malbim has a great phrase here, a great turn of the phrase. Hon Yosef Re'im Rabim, Im Tir Ha'ashir Yeshlo Re'im Rabim. If you see a wealthy man who has many friends, Inam Re'im Shel Ha'ashir, Rak Shel Ha'hon. Okay, he's not a friend of the guy, he's a friend of the money. Shehu Yosef Re'im Rabim, because it'll add many friends. Kamosha Mosif Kesef Kain Yosef Re'a. And the more money he gets, the more friends he will get. Vidal, and a poor person, Kamoshi Pard Me Ashro, just like the poor person is parted from his wealth, Kain Yiparid Me Re'ehu. Okay, now this one is alluding to the idea I said, but I don't think he's actually saying the idea I said. Shirov hareus v'ha'ava hu avas atzmo. Right? The majority of friendship and love is love of the self. And Freud disagrees with that and says all love is self-love, right? But Malvin is saying it's the majority, and I guess that kind of fits in with the Rambam's Rambam's threefold division. Is in the Rambam's threefold division: friendship of utility, that's definitely love of the self; friendship of enjoyment, that's definitely love of the self; but then friendship for a higher purpose is really love of the good, and it could be argued that that's not love of the self. I mean, you can argue that it is love of the self also, but if you want to like say the Rove thing. But then he says, "V'talui b'hahon shemakavim to'elas mimena." So at the very end, he does bring it back to the to utility, that people are friends based on love of the self, and they hope for a utility from the wealth. And with the poor person, they're not going to get it. So really, ultimately, that's like the Rambag, but he like acknowledges the idea of love being self-love. Okay. Then you've got, who was the other one I wanted to show you? Hold on. Oh, maybe this was actually in, yeah, this is in the Mikros Gedolos. Just one second. I just want to make sure that that's the case. Oh yeah, no, it was in Mitzvahs David. Hon ha'osher Yosef labalav reim rabim kihu ahuv lakol bein la'anim bein la'ashirim. So wealth will add friends to many friends because he is beloved both to the poor because they get stuff from him, and to the rich, I guess because he's in their zone. Okay, aval hadal nifrad hu afilu mere'ehu hadal kamohu. Okay, so what question of our questions is he answering there?
What kind of friends are they?
Okay, what kind of friends, and also,
why is it no?
Yeah, I think so. Right? Why is it singular?
Oh yeah, why?
Right? Because he's saying, so he's learning re'ehu as his friend was
Oh.
similar to him, you know?
Yeah.
So that is a new nuance here. So the first half I think could be understood the way we were understanding it, either the way the Ralbag and Malvin were, that utility, you know, with the poor person for utility, and then the Ashir because of, like, I guess the Ashir because of a friend of enjoyment, where like you like rich people, like rich people, like they like hanging out with them, like it's they're, you know, they have stuff in common, they can go on their yachts, you know, hitch their yachts together, whatever rich people do with yachts. um uh, and but the second half is interesting. That requires thought. So why will the poor person separate from his friend who's poor? Why don't you have that same phenomenon of identification where you stick with your friend who's in a similar state to you? What do you say there? Oh, and by the way, this is also answering the question of who's separating from whom. Is maybe this is why it's ambiguous. Is he is separating from his friend, and his friend is separating from him. It goes both ways there. So the question is why.
I mean, maybe there's a feeling that if you could get, like, if you are not associating with the poor person, then you're not poor.
Oh, that's
Like,
interesting. I could see that. Right. I an example just leapt to mind of that. Okay, hold on just a second. This is not equal to what you're saying, but it is an example of an expression of what you're saying, which is that I've seen people, let's say, criticize, like, okay, one of the things I think is becoming that people are becoming aware of now is that that poverty doesn't always look like poverty, you know, and you have many people who are homeless who you would not be able to tell are homeless. You know, it's becoming known, let's say, like in schools, in high schools, that like classmates will find out that their fellow classmate is poor and homeless. Or let's say like people who you know, you work with, you'll find out that they're poor and homeless. In fact, I got to recommend a book now that I'm in my apartment. Hold on just 1 second. So out of this is a famous book that I just finished reading over Shabbos, Nickel and Dimed. I don't know if you've heard of it, by Barbara Ehrenreich. If any of you want to borrow it from me, it's a very engaging and fast read. So basically what she does is this woman who's a writer and who's actually a PhD in molecular biology or something like that. I mean, she's got very eclectic tastes, but she did this experiment where she tried to live on minimum wage, getting, you know, poor jobs of like the poorest of America, and she did this in like the late 90s. Very, very good book. But she also discovered this, that like a lot of people who don't look poor really are poor. But people would criticize poor people for, let's say, like buying nice clothing or buying like a nice phone, you know, and say like, well, if you were really poor, you'd just be spending on like food and stuff like that. And there are many reasons why a poor person would want to do that. Maybe because it's going to help them get a better job or whatever. But the thing is that like they, how did you say it again, Zeph? This triggered the idea, but say what you said.
they have a feeling that if they don't associate with the poor person, then
Right.
they won't be poor.
Okay, right, exactly. Is that there is an additional pain of moving in the same circles as the poor, or identifying yourself as the poor, or looking like the poor, or just the circumstance of spending time in, you know, like physically, like being around the poor, you know, and that's not pleasant for a person who is poor. And furthermore, by the way, I mentioned to you last time that we were talking about the difference between dal and wait, was it this pasuk? Must have been another pasuk. Oh, it was in Tehillim, dal and evion. And there we saw it meant dal is poor and evion is destitute. I have seen another interpretation of dal as someone who became poor. Okay, which maybe is what the Malbim meant when he said Vidal Kamoshi Yiparid Me Ashro, just like he was separated from his wealth. In fact, actually, what am I saying? We have a dictionary. We have a Malbim dictionary. We can see if he interprets it that way. He doesn't say it here. Okay, fine. But I've seen that interpretation. So if you say that, then it might even be stronger, which is that he used to be not poor and he became poor, but he doesn't want to associate with the poor because it brings up all those unpleasant feelings, you know. So that would be a reason why he would separate from him. I think there's also a utility-based reason why he might want to separate, why he might not associate with the poor. What would you say there?
They can't
A couple
really
utility-based reasons. Yeah, sorry, say again.
They can't really help him.
Okay, yeah. Number one is lack of incentive. Is they're not going to be able to help him. That's true.
I mean, also people are more willing to, like, I don't know, like hire someone who's like, you know, more wealthy. Like he just feels like a more successful person, so people are more likely to hire them. Maybe.
Okay, that's also true. But is that explaining why he separates from another poor person?
Oh, that's. Oh, I was thinking why he would want to make himself look like.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's good for that. Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of why he would poor people separate from each other, is that that from a utility-based circumstance is like if they're reliant on tzedakah, you know, I can see why they're not going to want to go around with other poor people. I mean, like, let's take the classic example in America, at least, of like begging on a street corner. You know, the likelihood, if you're sitting next to another poor guy begging for money, then like he's taking away from your resources. Like people are not going to be as, you know, you're going to go and you see two poor people there, you're going to take the money we're going to give to one and split it into two. You know, that's just like practicality. So they'll spread out. And then there's another reality. I'm assuming this, and maybe it's different because there is such a thing as like ethics in like homeless regions, but poor people will steal from other poor people, you know. And like, you know, when you see people, let's say like in the city, homeless people, you know, and they're sleeping, but they have to sleep holding on to all of their possessions because someone's going to take them. And who's going to take them? The rich guy's not going to take them. Other poor people will take them, you know? So if we're talking about dire poverty, I mean, this is not obviously true for like people who are, you know, like in like what, you know, just on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. We're talking about the people who are like in the fringe levels, you know, then there's a utility reason to not associate with other poor people, you know, because you got to like, you know, it's a dog eat dog world and you have to fend for yourself. Yeah. Okay. Next, the Meiri. So the Meiri, let me just get this on the screen, move you guys to the other side. Okay, so the Meiri says, Hon Yosef Re'im Rabim Vidal Merehu Yipared Siper Ma'alas Ha'osher. So this is, he says, this is talking about the greatness of money. Okay, I wouldn't have thought that. Kishabalav misnahig bo karoi, when its owners conduct themselves properly. V'amar, so that's already a very different thing. We were assuming it's just a neutral reporting of a phenomenon. He's saying that it's talking about a person who's using his money properly, and therefore this is a praise, and therefore the person in the first half of the pasuk is a chacham. Okay. V'amar shehu mosif lo ohavim rabim, and it says he's going to increase friends, add many friends. V'dal merehu yipared, klomer shehadal yipardu mimenu ba'onyo. And it, meaning that the poor person will separate from him in his poverty. V'nir li shekara hadal bal hamamachu pahus. So it's talking about so this is interesting. All right, I missed this last time. This is a poor person, a rich person, a bal mamon, shu pahus, who's degenerate. Umisnahig bederech shekol bnei adam moasim bo umarchikim mimeno, and he conducts himself in a way where all people are disgusted by him and distance themselves from him. V'hi he'ara labal hanachasim lasos behem amutal alav. And this is the practical advice here is for a person who owns things to conduct himself in a manner that is befitting, that fulfills his obligations. Now, I don't think that's a pshat read of dal, of poor person. What does this footnote say? 23. Okay, fine. Chevraso. I don't think that helps us. Yeah, that's a weird read of the pasuk, in my opinion. But let's see if we can get an idea from it, maybe. So he's saying if you use your money properly, then you'll increase friends. Okay, so what? How is that like a result of using money properly? And then why is he forcing this interpretation of dal being a person who does have money but he uses it improperly? Strange. It is funny, by the way, that the pasuk never identifies the person in the first half as a wealthy person. Right? It says wealth adds many friends. It doesn't call him a wealthy person. By the way, I just realized this not related to this point, but to support my point about dal might mean someone who became poor. I wonder if that's the word where the word bucket comes from, of dal or dala, because dala is to like draw something up out of a well with a bucket. So you're lowering it, you know. Just 1 second. Also, I think, did the Sefer Hookah also say? Oh no, wait, Rinachmias. Someone else said something like the Malbim. Sorry, like the Meiri. Let me just see if this is yeah, the Hookah. That's the Radak's father says, "Hun Yosef Reim Rabim Kishehu B'Seichel." Vidal Meiri parade below seichel. Okay, so he says it's talking about someone who conducts himself with seichel or not, and he says kiakol samuch al masha hiktim ivelis adam to salef darko. He connects it to the previous pasuk, and he connects it to the next pasuk, but it's connected to foolishness. So it's not exactly the same as the Malvin, but Meiri. I'm getting my guys mixed up today.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess what he's trying to do is like, it seems like it's just like he's trying to put it in the framework of decision making.
Yes, that's a good point.
It seems like the way we were reading it is just sort of, that's how it is.
Okay, good. All right, so let me, that actually reminds me of a point that Rabbi Moskowitz makes, which is, Rabbi, okay, I don't agree with this as universally as Rabbi Moskowitz has sometimes said it, but I'll repeat his words. Rabbi Moskowitz says that Mishlei is only going to deal with things that are within your control. So he says, if it's talking about a poor person, it has to be talking about a poor person who was rendered poor by his own foolish decisions. And if it's talking about a rich person, it has to be talking about a rich person who was made wealthy based on his own decisions, or who maintained his wealth based on his own decisions. I disagree with that as a universal statement, because I think it could also be describing a circumstance, and the pasuk is aimed at a person who happens to be in a circumstance of poverty or wealth, and then telling you how to make decisions from there. But I agree that it does seem like the Meiri here is making a move like that, saying that if this were just describing a circumstance, so then who cares? You know, like, it's not in your control if you make friends or not. That just depends on your wealth. But Meiri is therefore putting it into decision making, saying, okay, if you have wealth, you can use that to make many friends. Or if you conduct yourself properly, I shouldn't say use that because that implies motive. If you use your wealth properly, you will make many friends. And if you don't, you will lose friends. So that is putting in the realm of decision making. Okay, good. So then what's the idea then? And how is he making friends? I mean, I guess, okay, I mean, yeah, you want to say? Or, I mean, if you have wealth, it gives you the ability to do many good things. And if you use your wealth for good, then people will like you for good reasons because you're doing good with your wealth, you know? Whereas if you use your wealth, I think we brought this up earlier in the year, but that woman who was an heiress and a billionaire or something like that, and she left all of her money to her dog. That's just what's her name? Leona. Wait, am I making this up? Hold on. Leona Helmsley. Is that or am I just making that up? Yeah, that's the woman. Nickname Queen of Mean. Dog. Yeah, wait. Yeah, right. Leaving the bulk of her estate to providing for her dog. Right. Yeah. So that is not a person who's using her wealth properly, and she's losing friends. And if you just think about what you can do with all that wealth, then you can get all kinds of friends with this. Okay. You can get friends of utility. You can get friends of enjoyment, because again, if you will be able to be friends with other wealthy people because you know that they're not trying to get stuff out of you. Also, you have the leisure to be able to enjoy your friendships more, as opposed to using all of your free time to be involved in trying to stay alive and sustaining your livelihood. And you can actually become friends for a higher purpose as well, because you can do good with your money. The friend that's going to be a little harder to get is a friendship of trust, because rich people will always have to be worried that the other person is befriending them for an ulterior motive. So that's gonna be a little bit harder. But yeah, and if you don't use your wealth properly, if you are, I don't know exactly what Malvin. Again, wow, Malvin must be on my mind today. What the Meiri says is a pachus, a degenerate, and misnaheg b'derech shekol b'nei adam mo'osim bo. I don't know what he means by that exactly, but but yeah, you're going to drive people away. And maybe that's the thing also, is we saw from earlier Rabbeinu Yonah how if you're wealthy, you can get away with a lot of bad behavior and a lot of bad midos. So maybe it's the person who is just acting in a disgusting way for the sake of because there's nothing that forces him about his lifestyle to act in a way that is admirable. He doesn't have to be a certain type of person. Another interesting documentary to recommend is what was it called? I think it's called, hold on just a second here. Filthy Rich documentary. Is that Filthy Rich? No. That's a new documentary. That's not the one I'm thinking of. Okay, I don't know what it's called. There's a documentary that was made in the early 2000s, I think, by the heir to Johnson & Johnson, the company. And what he did was he went around interviewing a bunch of other kids who are going to inherit billions of dollars or whatever before they inherited them. So he was on the verge of his 21st birthday or something like that when he would have gained control of the money. And he interviewed a bunch of kids, and it was interesting because there were certain kids in the documentary. When I say kids, I mean again, people who were in their late teens, early 20s, who were raised not knowing that they were wealthy. There was a kid in the documentary that the way he found out he was wealthy was he was in school, and his a classmate showed him the Forbes list and said, "Hey, isn't this your dad?" And then there's another kid whose parents wanted to keep him not knowing about his wealth because they wanted to keep him humble or whatever. And then his uncle or something like that took him to Grand Central Station and said, "You see this? All of this belongs to you," and just spoiled it, and then there were some kids who were just clear jerks. Like this kid, one of the questions they asked is what do you want to do with your money, once you gain control of it? And there's this kid, I don't even remember how he got his money, but he was like, I would help all of the starving people in America. Just kidding. I would go and throw this party where, and he was just like just openly being a jerk, about like saying how he wasn't going to actually like use this for good, so like there is a certain thing that, especially if you were raised spoiled about your wealth, or if you think you attribute greatness to yourself because of your wealth, that can just indulge or give you like the leeway to indulge your worst qualities, and your ego and all this other stuff. So maybe that's what the Meiri says about degeneracy, yeah. I want to read his Derech Nister, not because of the idea, but because of the methodology. So he says, Uvderech Nister, Kvar bi'arna ki lif'amim yikare haseichel rash v'dal. So I've already explained that sometimes the intellect is called the poor one, okay? And that's based on a pasuk or it's associated to a pasuk in Koheles where he describes the poor young chacham and the rich, powerful king, foolish king. And that's a mashal in the Meiri's lingo for, or what the Meiri believes is Shlomo HaMelech's lingo for the seichel and the chomer, the body and the psyche. So he says the seichel is sometimes called poor, the chomer ashir ubal hon, and the material aspect of the person, the physicality, is called wealth and possessor of money. Ulefikach, therefore, ulefamim behefech, but sometimes the opposite. Okay, in other words, sometimes if you see the word poor means in terms of knowledge, and the poor one means the foolish one. I think I quoted to you the proverb in Mivchar Pninim, or maybe it's in Chazal, in ani ela badas, that there's no poverty except in knowledge. That's the real poverty. So then here's the methodology. Kichein kavanas hamadavrim b'shnei panim lahastir ulahalim, that people who are speaking in two layers, in like a nigla and a nister, will strive to reveal and conceal. To conceal their words. And any intelligent person has to understand them based on their context. Okay, so what he's saying is when you encounter a reference to poverty or wealth in a mashal, sometimes poverty could equal chachma and be talking about the intellect. Sometimes poverty can be talking about someone who is wise, and sometimes they be talking about someone who is foolish, and same thing with the opposite. And you have to learn it out from its context, which I think this is a good methodology lesson. And then he ties it to what we talked about yesterday. Not yesterday. What we talked about in the previous pasuk, and what I've been talking about in the Stoic Jew podcast, which is Vamar Hina Shabal Hahon, the possessor of wealth, Ratzomer Hachomer Hamavakish Hamosros. That's a mashal for the psyche that seeks superfluities, extra things, excess. Yosef Reim Rabim, he will add many things. Chel Gadol Mikochos Haguf HaHayergeshos, tremendous wealth or success in the bodily faculties and senses. I don't know what this means. Aval Hadal Yipar Mehem, but the poor person will separate from them. V'lo Yishtamish Behem Rak V'yat Tzorach HaHechrachi, and will not utilize them except according to necessity. Okay, yeah. So what does that mean? So he's saying that, maybe Chel here is army. I don't know if it's Chel wealth or Chel army. Chayil wealth or Chel army. So what he's saying basically is, if you are seeking excess, you're going to get a lot of excess and increase your desires, and that's going to be bad for you for the reasons that we said before. But then a poor person, someone who is not seeking excess, is only going to utilize this wealth to the extent that he can. Something to think about. I know our time is up, but yeah. Alrighty, so we got some ideas there. Alrighty, and we'll see, by the way, that the next pasuk is also on the same subject. I'm gonna have to think about what we do tomorrow, whether we go on to the next pasuk or do something else, because we're gonna be remote and we don't do question and answer remote. Okay. Alrighty, so see you later.
Wait, question.
Yeah.
How do you distinguish between like what he's doing and like just projecting your own idea?
Yeah. So I wrote a lengthy blog post on that, which I'll send you. My interpretation of the Meiri is Derech Nister is you get the idea from the Derech Nigle, and then you apply the exact same idea to the subject matter of perfection. So you have the discipline from learning according to the pshat and taking it literally, and that prevents you from wildly speculating about the nister. That's why I like his approach to the nister the best.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, I'll post it. I'll send you the thingy. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.